Alright, before we get started on this here, we're going to make a putter cover. It's going to be 3 different sizes. It's a free pattern. The link will be below for you to grab that. I will be doing a giveaway with this purse still. The information is in my laptop bag video. I'm going to post probably in a week or two who the winner of that's going to be. The details basically are, as long as you're subscribed to my channel and you like that laptop bag video and throw a comment on there, then you have a chance to win that purse. I'll be putting together a video on how I cut my patterns and tape them together in order for me to use them. I'll also cover how I make those patterns reusable. Let's say you order a physical pattern from me. You can make that reusable instead of just destroying the paper like you see a lot of these videos show, including mine. Or if you're getting a digital pattern and you print it off, instead of having to tape it together and do it that way every time, you can use these methods I'll show in my next video on how to make that pattern reusable. It's got a few tips and things in it, so that'll cover a couple things, and I'll announce who the winner of that purse is going to be in that video. So just make sure you're subscribed, and if you go to that laptop bag video, hit like and put a comment on there. I'd like to do more free patterns, depends on how much time I can scrounge up. So if you subscribe, then you'll get alerted, and hopefully it'll be another free one. I'm using 4-ounce veg tan. You could probably go thicker if you want here too. So first I cut out the parts. I got the templates all situated, cut out the parts, but I cut them out past the line just a little bit. It'll make it easier to trim these later on out of the leather, so we're not like following the edge of the paper. We can follow the line precisely as we're cutting these out of the leather. So what I don't do is punch these holes out. I'm going to mark those, and you want to know what hardware you're going to use first. I'm going to put these 2 dots on there so the strap just comes down and locks down over those. And there's 2 of them because sometimes a putter's a little bit larger or smaller, so then you can bop it back one if you have a real big putter. If you're going to custom fit it and you have the putter, you can put any latch or anything you want on there so it fits real nice. But I usually just go with these little dots. I'm just marking the center of these holes so I can mess with the hardware later on. I'm sure most people have figured this out on your own, but where it spits these little pieces out, I try to angle it. Like if I'm coming across this way, I'll have it shoot them back. But I'm coming this way right now, so I'll have them shoot this way. So as I'm punching holes, they get out of my way. Otherwise they get over the holes, and I'm always constantly brushing them off. So technically you could cut these out with scissors, but it's going to look a lot nicer if you use a knife. And also when I'm going around these sharp corners, I use this middle finger to press and push as I turn. So if I'm just pulling with my arm, the resistance might give and I'll slip and make more of a jagged cut. If 2 parts are sticking together, you don't want to just pull it apart. It's going to fray and look messy. Go back and make sure you get those cuts clean. There we go. One other thing I like to do while I'm cutting parts out is if I'm going to be cutting an end like that, instead of cutting to the open side, which this corner can kind of move and it won't be super clean, I like to cut where there's leather behind that edge. Then that leather at that corner won't move on me. So here's one of those dots. I'm going to quick figure out what size hole I need to punch. And punch those holes, and then I'm going to die these parts, and I'll finish all the edges and get ready to start sewing. So another thing I like to do is instead of just punching where they're marked, I'll punch this side, line it up with the holes, because sometimes you may not hit it just like you think you're gonna. Don't go too hard. I'm not trying to stretch the holes out on this side, but I just want to mark it so I can get them exactly where I need them to be, just in case something's off. I want for this to come through here, and then I'll have to make a slit. So what I like to do is grab a scrap piece of leather and start making a couple holes and slits and get the right size that I want. I did one with the 5/32 inch hole punch and it works, but I'm going to try a slightly smaller one at 3/16 and see if I like that better. I do. That's definitely snugger. Alright. And I keep track of the size of the slit that I made too. That was perfect, so I'll just make sure I transfer that exactly how I got it here. So since those holes are marked center, I'll give it a press just to make sure I get it lined up just right first. I'm just looking to make sure I do the slit about the same. Getting it straight can be tricky. I look at the angle of the knife itself. They do make hole punches that do the slit at the same time too. Sometimes you want to just give it a tap, make sure you got it centered. I usually just kind of give it a little bit of a rock. Make sure the knife's sharp, but just kind of rock it a little bit to finish that cutout. Alright, and there's two of them that I'll attach to that side, but I'm going to dye this first. So I sealed these two parts with acrylic Resolene and popped those through there. This one I didn't seal, and I kind of worked it a little bit so that it's loose and I can get it to sew and get that corner nice. Then I'll seal it after it's sewn on here. But what I did first is I pushed them through. I marked the circle around these two pieces of leather I cut out. So I'm going to glue them on there. I'm going to use contact adhesive, something real strong so they don't peel off of there, especially if you're putting a wet golf club in there. You don't want these starting to get saturated if some of the glues are water soluble. So what I'll do first is you can do some Loctite or something like that. The red Loctite is going to be more permanent. All I have right now is the blue, but the blue works decent too. A little bit of blue Loctite on there. You can grab a pair of pliers or something, especially if you have like a rubber pair of pliers or a jeweler's pliers or something. What I usually just grab is a piece of leather, so I'm not scratching them all up. Get that on there pretty tight. I'm not going like full force. I don't want these popping through the leather eventually. I'm getting them good and snug though. And then I'm going to go step over to my glue booth and glue these on the back with contact cement. I'll put contact cement on each side, and that's why I marked that circle so I can keep it inside of the perimeter. I'll do that and I'll come right back here. And so I went past the line just a little bit with the glue. I just want to make sure these edges didn't start to peel up. I let it tack up just a little bit. and I press these into place. I'm going to set that aside and let that dry while I start sewing this boxing onto the top part. And this will darken up too. These were the same color, it's just that this is sealed. I got started here. I just want to point out, with smaller stitches like this, I have the holes a lot closer together on this pattern just to give it a nicer look. But you don't want to pull these stitches quite as tight as you would if the stitches were further apart using a thicker thread. This is pretty standard for me. I just kind of go with the same thickness of thread regardless of the spacing, but just don't yank those stitches quite as tight or you're going to start pulling some of them. Once you get a few stitches in, you can throw this in your stitching pony. You'll see me come through and go the same way each time. So this thread that comes through the top is always going towards the center of the project, and then I always make sure this needle comes on the outside side of that thread, and then you'll get the thread looking nice and even. Otherwise it will hop back and forth and look real funny. Another thing I did was, as I was kind of softening this up a little bit before I seal it, I want it soft so that it bends around this corner nicely. I was bending this over like I wanted it to fit across the two pieces, but at the same time I was trying to give it that curve a little bit, just to pre-shape it. Doing this will really help during the sewing process, so you're not fighting it quite as much. You can see it's already kind of wanting to be in that shape. Helps significantly. Okay, you can see I got it in my stitching pony here, and what I did is I sewed that first panel on just up a little ways. I didn't sew it the whole way. That way I can still get my hand in here easily to sew the front panel on. So what I'll do is I'll sew this front panel on just past where that's sewn to, and switch back and forth as I go, so it's easy just to get my hands in there without, you know, if you sew just one all the way and then try to do this one while you're getting your hands in there, it can be a little more difficult. I just like to do that. It gives me a little bit more playroom. So you can see as I go, the stitches are going to loosen up. But don't worry, because when you tighten it, it'll tighten back like 5 stitches, and that 5th one or 6th or whatever it is won't loosen back up as you work on this next stitch. Just a matter of pulling this over enough to meet that hole, and I'll leave the needle in there for a second while I switch hands. And just make sure that's out of the way, same way every time. I'm going to work my way all the way past where those other stitches stop just a little bit, and switch back and forth if I need to until I get this all sewn up. You can see it looks a lot nicer going this way than if you went inside the other way. It might be just a hair easier to stitch, but I think it looks a lot cleaner, more professional by doing it this way. So I started that first one by going past the halfway spot by like an inch, and then I did the other side and came past that by like an inch or so, and then I started switching back and forth as I'm getting to this end, like an inch. Now I'll switch back to this side, probably finish it up, and then finish that side up. Just makes it easier for me to get my hands in there and manipulate the needles and stuff. Another thing you can do, and I've done this in the past, is cut this needle in half and then just kind of grind down the edge so it's not sharp, but similar to what this is right now. That helps too, so then you don't have all that space to try to manipulate this long needle through. But so another thing you can do too, if this is getting real difficult, is instead of trying to hit both holes in one shot, I'll just come through the gusset, then pop that through the panel in the front there. So I don't have to try to line it up. I just let me tightening the stitches do that for. But I'll still make sure to tighten it so it gets back like those 5-6 stitches. Actually, you don't have to loosen the threads up as much if you're struggling to try to get through both at the same time. It usually loosens up even further. But that's another way to do it if it's causing a lot of problems trying to get in there. I know for me this side is harder. Something about me being right-handed or coming in from the other side, I don't know. This side seems to be going easier for me. Okay, I got this side finished up. Usually what I like to do is, since I'm going to be back stitching like 4 stitches, I'd like to actually start here and stitch up and back so it is a mirror image of that instead of only having the back stitches on one side. I think it just looks a little nicer. I forgot to do that. But what I do when I back stitch is I make sure the stitches are pulled tight, and I'll hold these threads so that it doesn't get pulled through and loosened up when I come back through. So a lot of times I'm going through the thread itself, which is fine. I like that. It kind of locks everything in place. A little bit tougher since those holes are tightened up with all the thread in there. But after you get that first one, you gotta hold them threads as much. And I also, instead of pulling this to the side, a lot of times I'll pull it in line with the stitches, so this next one will actually go through that thread as well, because then that just locks it in place even more so. I don't know if it makes a huge difference. That's just what I do. I think what I'll do is just go back, I think 3. So since I got the 2, this one will stay on the inside. Pop that one through. And since I back stitched, I still will tie just a little knot. I'll just do a simple box knot. Or like a, I don't know the exact term for this one. I'll show you here though. I think a standard box knot is just 1 times through, but what I like to do when I'm tying knots in the back of stuff is go through twice. Because then when you tighten it, it doesn't loosen out as you're farting around with the knot again. And then I just go through once to lock that into place. And when I do that, that first knot stays real close up and tight. So I can tell you I've had it a couple times where I just do the standard box knot and it doesn't, it loosens up a little, so then the couple stitches might loosen up a hair. More important if you're not doing back stitching. But then I'll put a little teeny dab of glue on there, and when it dries I'll clip them threads real close. I'll finish up this other side here and do the same. So that's all done. I closed it up, and I think I prefer having like a decorative stitch around this edge. And I'm going to adjust this corner a little bit and maybe this corner a little bit. I do have to seal the boxing still, but I'm going to go back to the drawing board and create that into the pattern, those decorative stitches. I'm going to adjust that corner as well too, but I'll have the decorative stitches come around. I'll do that. I'll modify this one, but the final pattern won't have that sharp corner there. I think I'll have it kind of a swoop in or something. So I'll do that, and I'll pop back on the camera here and show you the decorative stitches and how I would do that and how it will be on the final pattern. Alright, so I went back, I added a little bit to the ends of these, so you could go over the top of both of these parts to lock those edges in if you want. Then I also changed the design of this. Instead of having that sharp corner there, it's going to be kind of an ease into it, and I got decorative stitches, and I changed the shape of this a little bit too. So I'm going to cut this out, adjust the shape of that, and put decorative stitches in there. I think it's going to look a lot better. Alright, I'm all done. I like it much better with that decorative stitching around that edge. This is the thinnest version. There's going to be 2 other ones, a medium and a large. If you're just making them to sell, that medium one is going to be the universal one. The thinner and the thicker one are if people have out of the ordinary putters and they need it more of a custom fit. And then again, some putters are larger than others, so that's why I put those 2 stud things on there. So if you need to go to a wider one, you can.